In the first scene, we see a girl running away in just a nightdress, hiding a suitcase among the rocks. But someone catches up with her. The events then move to modern-day Liguria, Italy. Rosalind Palliser and Will Walsh are in love with each other. Rosalind, a renowned artist, became a widow some time ago. But now she is ready to let go of the past and build a family with her beloved. Their vacation in Italy goes wonderfully. However, Rose is troubled by something, which Will clearly doesn't know about. Rose dislikes being photographed and doesn't explain why. Otherwise, she seems like a cheerful young woman. While they were swimming, Will decided to play a prank on his beloved and scared her. Nearly crying, Rose asked him not to do that again. Will proposed to Rose. She said she needed to ask her twin daughters before agreeing. 8 months later in London, the family moved into a new home. The couple was already married, and Rose was pregnant. Will set up a studio for his wife in the new house so she could paint in peace. Rosalind's daughters are very energetic and curious, like all children their age. The couple is helped by a girl named Candy, a nanny. The house is big, and Will and Rose believe it will be their personal paradise. Will has a great relationship with his stepdaughters. The girls would like their mother to have twins again so that each of them could have a little brother. When Rose went out onto the balcony to take a photo, the old railing broke, and the woman fell straight down. She was rushed to the operating room. Will was there the whole time. Doctors put Rose under anesthesia and began the surgery. Will felt helpless and had to just wait. Fortunately, the doctors were able to save their son. When Rose woke up from anesthesia, Will was already by her side. For some reason, Rose was convinced she had given birth to twins and kept asking where their second son was. Will thought it was just the effects of anesthesia and stress. 6 months passed. The spouses held a party at their house to celebrate their son Matteo. Rose's mother Vivian noticed that the daughter looked tired, but she assured that everything was fine. Rose's longtime friend, Milton Hunter, gave her an expensive necklace. Will didn't like it. On the whole, the party was going well, the guests were having fun. Rose tried to appear cheerful, but she looked very exhausted. Becca, Candy's friend, openly flirts with Will, but he ignores her suggestive hints. In the evening, Will read a fairy tale to his stepdaughters. Rose was clearly troubled by something. Of course, Will couldn't help but notice the oddities in her behavior, which began immediately after their son's birth. During the night, Will woke up to sobs, but it wasn't the son crying. It was Rose who was frantically scratching the wall in the hallway, repeating that the son was calling her. Will calmed his wife, thinking she was just sleepwalking. The next morning, while everyone was having breakfast, Will hastily painted over the scratches on the wall. Marcia, Will's boss, assigned him to lead a new project. Sensing Will's concern, she hinted that postpartum depression was normal, but Will assured that his wife was fine, just tired. During lunch break, Will called Candy and learned that Rose had taken Matteo for a checkup at the clinic. But a few minutes later, he saw his wife at the cemetery next to an unnamed grave. Rose is convinced that the husband and everyone else are lying to her. Not knowing what to do, Will went to Milton, who handled the promotion of Rosalind's paintings. Will is here to talk about her. Milton thinks Rose's condition is related to the stress she experienced during childbirth. He advised Will to contact psychiatrist Dr. Muller, who works in Switzerland but also consults online. Milton not only has collections of art objects but also weapons here. It turns out he served in military intelligence in the past. Will noticed a photograph of Rosalind when she was very young. The photo was taken by Vivian's stepbrother, who was a member of the Academy of Arts. Milton said he could help financially if needed, but Will's pride wouldn't allow him to accept help. In her studio, Rose is working on paintings. Lately, there has been a lack of understanding between her and Will. Will didn't hide the fact that he spoke with Milton about her depression. Rose denies having depression. Taking the wife by her scratched hand, Will tried to gently explain that she suffers from sleepwalking. Will is ready to support Rose, but at the same time he's frightened by what's happening. Soon Will was scheduled to go on a one-day business trip. Leaving the house, he encountered a courier who brought a package for Rose. Will didn't pay much attention to it, leaving the box by the door. Will is an architect and will be commissioned by Marcia to design a new bridge. Returning from his trip late in the evening, Will immediately sensed that something was wrong. Rose's studio was a mess. Seeing the word liar written, Will quickly went upstairs and found that the children weren't there. He left his wife a voicemail asking her to call back. All of Rose's and the children's documents were missing too. Seeing that the package's country of origin was France, Will became even more worried. Hearing footsteps in the house, he went to check what was wrong. But it was just Milton. He was able to enter because the door was unlocked. Milton said he received a call yesterday from Rose, who informed him of her intentions to leave. Milton tried to talk her out of it, but in vain. Will wanted to call the police, but Milton didn't think it was a good idea since Rose left of her own free will. Will tried calling his wife again, but once more reached her voicemail. All night Will couldn't sleep, searching the house for clues. Perhaps it could help him understand where exactly Rose went with the children. Among the belongings, Will found an old photograph of Rose. On the back was an inscription in French, "I forgive you." After napping for a few hours, Will drank coffee in the morning. Suddenly his attention was drawn to a book by the author J.B. Raven. Apparently this man was the one in the picture with Rose. Will found information about Raven on the internet. It turned out that he was not only a writer but also an artist and a photographer. Long ago he had photographed Rosalind. Will turned to a well-known art dealer and learned that in the last years of his life, Raven did not paint pictures but traveled. Obtaining his early works is very difficult. At home, Will opened the suitcase previously delivered by courier, and saw a series of photographs. This package was from Normandy. Leaving a voicemail for Milton, Will was about to develop one of the pictures. Suddenly the phone rang. It was Rose's daughters. The poor connection made it hard to hear anything. Will only managed to make out the girls saying something about a stroller. After that, the call was cut off. Will hurriedly packed his things and set off for Normandy. Along the way he kept trying to call his wife. Will knows that Vivian's stepbrother J.B. Raven left her an inheritance of a house in Normandy. Vivian never goes there because the house is old. But that's probably where Rose went. Will showed the locals a photograph of Rose, asking if anyone had seen her. But the locals answered his questions reluctantly. One suspicious guy said in English that he didn't know Rose. Will headed towards that very house. The place really was in disrepair. Will knocked on the door, calling out for Rose. At one point, he heard the voices of the girls playing not far from the shore. Next to them was the stroller. Will, who was frantically worried, asked what had happened. The girls replied that their mother wouldn't leave the house because she needed to stay in the dark. Mateo wasn't in the stroller, there was just some junk. They hurried back home. When the girls said it was better for Mateo to stay here, a horrifying realization struck Will. All this time someone had been under the junk in the stroller. Mateo wasn't breathing anymore. Will was so shocked that he was unable to say anything. Had his wife really done it? Rose was in the house on the top floor. She barricaded the door of the room, but Will easily managed to get inside. Rose was softly humming a song, and when she saw her husband, she seemed not to recognize him. Will asked what happened to Mateo. Rose just kept repeating that all the gaps in the room needed to be closed. Will tried to get his wife out of here. She screamed and pushed him so hard he fell off the stairs. At that moment, Rose finally recognized him and also came downstairs, saying she really needed some rest. After making sure Rose and her daughters were asleep, Will left the house and tried to call Vivian, but in vain. The nearest bar was already closed, but Will managed to find a public phone and contacted the police. Since Will didn't speak French, he couldn't call for help. Will went back to the house. Deep in the night, he took a shovel and did what he had to do, bidding farewell to his son. Will also burned some of the belongings. In the morning, he noticed that the suspicious guy from the bar was wandering nearby. Will asked the girls to pack their things urgently. When they asked where their brother was, Will tried to explain as gently as possible that Mateo was no longer with them. After that, Will helped exhausted Rose to the car. The same guy approached them and asked if she was okay. Seeing the guy, Rose burst into tears and hugged him. Obviously he had lied earlier about not knowing her. Will demandingly asked the guy to leave them alone and helped Rose get into the car. She continued crying. On the way while the girls and Rose slept, Will tried to comprehend what had happened. He had just lost the son and only wanted to know who was to blame. Will brought his family to Switzerland. Vivian arrived as soon as she heard about what had happened. When Vivian asked where her grandson and Candy were, Will said they needed to have a serious talk. During the conversation, psychiatrist Dr. Muller was present. It turned out that Rose had been suffering from schizophrenia since adolescence. This happened after JB's assistant did something inappropriate to her. Milton's lawyers ensured he received the maximum punishment. Vivian thought Will was aware, but he knew nothing. All this time Will believed his wife was taking migraine medication, not medication for schizophrenia. Will revealed to Vivian the truth about Mateo no longer being alive. That day Will was so shocked that he didn't know what to do. He only knew one thing: if he told the police, Rose would be blamed. Vivian said she would take care of her daughter and granddaughters and asked Will to find Candy. Perhaps this would shed some light on what happened after Rose fled from England. Will called all of Candy's relatives and acquaintances, but no one knew where she was. To keep from going crazy, Will decided to throw all of Mateo's things out of the house. He also found Rose's medications and realized she hadn't been taking it lately. In the middle of the night, Will received a call from a journalist asking about Rose's paintings and the car crash. Will hung up, not understanding what was being talked about. Looking out the window, he saw someone near his house. That guy was clearly watching him. Will's life had turned into an endless nightmare. In the morning the phone rang again. Later, Will met with Milton and learned that he, using his influential connections in France, falsified the report of the car crash and other documents. Now Mateo's disappearance wouldn't raise any questions. Milton also gave Will some cash. Will was truly grateful to him. Now they had to wait until Rosalind recovered, and then decide what to do next. Will is worried about Candy's disappearance. What if it's all her fault and that's why she decided to run away? Will really needs to find out what actually happened to his son. Will continued his search, but so far without success. At home, he developed the photos he found in Rose's package. Her past was shrouded in darkness. Will took the photos to the art dealer who was almost certain it was missing pieces of the Normandy series. There was no doubt that the photographer was J.B. Raven. The art dealer was aware of the sensational story about J.B.'s assistant and the model in the photos. This made it very big in price, but of course that's not why Will was here. Later, he met with Marcia, who really wanted to help Will in some way. He couldn't tell her the details and only said he didn't know how he would cope when his wife returned home. When Rosalind got better, the husband brought her home. Their housekeeper Lena expressed her condolences about the accident and Matteo. Due to her amnesia, Rose doesn't remember anything. Her daughters are staying with Vivian for now. Will can't get the events of that fateful day that turned his life upside down out of his head. Rose returned to her artwork and faithfully takes her medication. She admitted she hardly remembers the son. Will said he removed all of Matteo's things from the house to numb the pain. When he asked Rose why she didn't initially tell him about her illness and why she stopped taking her medication, Rose didn't know what to say. She misses her daughters and regularly talks to them via video call. At night, Will continues his search. Perhaps Becca, who works as a dancer, knows where Candy is. He didn't notice some guy following him. Walking into the restroom of some cheap night spot, Will received a message from an unknown caller asking why everyone was saying it was a car crash. After taking her medication, Rose indeed felt better. Will told Rose that they could move and start a new life. Suddenly Rose asked why they still had the same car if they were in an accident. Will didn't know what to answer. Some memories began to come back to Rose. She admitted that back then she decided to stop taking the medications because she was afraid it would harm her pregnancy. Will honestly said that there was no accident. Matteo passed away, and they don't know the reason. Upon hearing this, Rose burst into tears. At night, Will received another message from the unknown caller. There was a video of Matteo in the message. Will has no idea who the sender is. The next morning, Will saw Lena trying to take that same suitcase out of the house and demanded an explanation. Lena said that supposedly Milton asked her to do it, warning Rosalind in advance. Not understanding what was happening, Will took the suitcase. Rose asked her husband where he got it from. At that moment Milton entered, somehow having keys to the house. Milton said that Rose supposedly invited him. Will had had enough of it all and bluntly told his wife that he didn't believe her amnesia. Perhaps for Rose it was just a convenient way to deflect suspicion. Rose became hysterical, and Milton demanded that Will stop. Outside the house they could talk frankly. Will realized that Milton wanted to get the suitcase and those photographs to save Raven's reputation. Milton advised Will not to dig into the past. Now they should only think about Rose and the girls. The uncertainty is not allowing Will to move on. What else doesn't he know about his wife? Will fell asleep in the car, just to avoid going home. Becca messaged him, and they met up. Becca told him that no one had seen Candy for several weeks. When Becca began openly flirting with Will, Candy suddenly walked into the room and took a provocative photo of them. Candy told Will that she wouldn't blackmail him if he just listened to her. It turns out Candy was the unknown caller all along. When she, Rose and the girls went to Normandy, Matteo got sick, but it was just a common cold. The locals hated them and did all sorts of nasty things to them. Almost every day Rose went to the bar to argue with them. They only went to Normandy to find the guy who sent Rose the package. The night before they left, Rose had a relapse of her illness. She still believed she had given birth to twins. At one point, Rose locked herself in her room and wouldn't let anyone in. Then the next morning, Candy found Matteo lifeless. Candy ran away because she was scared. Milton is taking care of Rosalind. She doesn't remember how she ended up at his house. Milton gave her medication, but it wasn't the kind she usually takes. Will went to Milton's house, knowing Rose was there. But Milton didn't open the door and called the police. After that, he opened the suitcase. Seeing a policeman, Will ran away. After breaking away from the chase, Will noticed the guy from Normandy, who apparently had been stalking him. The guy claimed he wanted to help. Will guessed it was Pierre Laurent, Raven's assistant. Pierre explained that in court, he was presented as the photographer's assistant, but in fact he was just helping around the house. One day Rosalind showed up with a suitcase containing photography equipment. Rosalind hid the suitcase and then ran. Pierre followed her. When he reached Rosalind, she screamed. In the end Rosalind slandered him. Wrongly spending 20 years in prison and being released, Pierre found Rosalind's hiding spot and sent her the package. Will wonders why Pierre did it, since Raven has long been passed away. But it turns out Raven had nothing to do with it. It was all Milton. Soon Milton received a call from Will, who made it clear he knew the truth. And Will was willing to keep quiet about it if Milton handed over Rosalind. Listening in on their conversation on the second phone, Rose got up from bed and found the suitcase with the photos. That's when she remembered everything, making her cry. Will broke into the house while Rose noticed that one of the guns from Milton's collection was missing. Milton tried to convince Will that Rose was always aware of her actions. But Will knows it's a lie. With the gun in his hand, Milton declared that he had always loved Rose. At that moment a shot rang out. Rose wounded Milton. Pierre was also here. Rose asked Milton why he did this to her. Many years ago he convinced her that Pierre was guilty. Milton said he did it only out of love. Will persuaded his wife to lower the gun for him and for the daughters. Rose did just that. After the spouses left, Pierre approached wounded Milton. A few seconds later 3 shots were fired. Pierre arranged it so that it seemed like Milton had voluntarily passed away. Some time later, the family went on vacation to Italy. In the final scene, we see them relaxing on the beach. Will remembers how before the wedding, he and Rose vowed their love to each other here. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.